What's up, guys? We are live. We are live before lock. The only stream you need to get through today's games. We have it for you. I'm joined by some luminaries who I will introduce in a second as the hip-hop beats continue to bring us all the energy we need right now. But we don't even need music because we got the NBA in front of us. Lots of gigantic tournaments, lots to talk about despite just 2 games. I'm excited. I'm Chris Spags, joined once again, the top player in the world, the namesake of this YouTube channel, the man behind all the data, all the information, all the things you need at Awesemo.com. His name is Alex Baker, but you know him as Awesemo. How are you doing, Alex?
Doing good, man. Excited for tonight's slate. We got $2 million prizes. So, man, I have a feeling that one of the people listening could have a very big night tonight.
Yeah, it's going to be a nice $1 million on all the major sites today. And of course, a lot going on our partner at SuperDraft. We'll talk more about that in a second. But I would be remiss if I didn't introduce this next man who's been thriving during quarantine. I could say running miles of content and actual miles out there. Looking great, ready for the NBA. His name's Josh Engleman, but you know him as the Chubster. How are you doing, Josh?
I don't think I've really been thriving during this quarantine. I've been super drafting during this quarantine.
Ooh, the transition. You've been super drafting? That's great.
I have.
And you know what? You can join Josh in the SuperDraft pool if you head over to superdraft.io immediately or download SuperDraft in the App Store and use the promo code Awesemo10 on there to get yourself $10 free with a deposit of $10. And if you deposit over $100, you get yourself $20 free in Super Cash, and that hits your account right away so you can play some games, take advantage of a lot of the overlay over there, which happens a lot for the new DFS sites, not like the other competitors out there, which tend to fill even when you don't think they will. So make sure you're playing on SuperDraft. Really no limits to what you can build on there. And of course, there is more winning. That is their tagline. So take advantage of it. Superdraft.io, promo code Awesemo10 for $10 free or $20 free if you deposit more than $100. And here we go. I am a walking ad. Colin in the YouTube chat says, you're goddamn right, Colin. That's the job. And here's another ad for you. Go to Awesemo.com/join and use the promo code RESTART. That gets you half off of all the sports that we have going on at Awesemo.com. And that is every sport out there. PGA popped off today for a tournament with no cuts, a really relaxing one, I'm sure, for all of us. NBA is back, MLB is back. All the data is as good as ever, if not better, with some of the new tools we have across a variety of sports. So make sure you're going to Awesemo.com/join and use the promo code RESTART for half off that first month of Awesemo Plus. All right, there we go, guys. And hit that like button, too. Why not? Just while we're doing full shill mode. But let's get to it. We got a lot of ownership data to talk about, some important things to hit on in that perspective because it is a 2-game slate, as I mentioned. And ownership projections have been updated within the hour. Let me see if there's any fresher ones hot off the presses before we did this show. 51 minutes ago is the most recent one, but there could be more as we go, as we get some more news in. But we have some fairly obvious chalk gentlemen up top that I want to get your thoughts on right away. A little bit different between the sites, but one guy looks uniformly owned. Player on the Jazz who should benefit quite a bit from no Bojan Bogdanovic out there. He is not playing in the restart due to injury, but a guy who soaks up some usage is Donovan Mitchell. He is chalk. He's normally a fairly safe play, at least a consistent play more nights than not. The prices look good on DraftKings, FanDuel, multiplier, and SuperDraft looks solid. So Alex, I'll ask you, is Donovan Mitchell a building block for you tonight, or is he one of the places you're willing to get away from?
Yeah, building block for sure. I mean, I love Donovan Mitchell tonight. Most of these teams are pretty full of all their main pieces. So having one guy out for the Jazz with Bojan Bogdanovic, that's really big, and that really throws off the salaries of his teammates. So I'm really looking to the Jazz tonight for my core plays, and the fact that they're playing against the Pelicans doesn't hurt either.
Josh, how are you feeling about that? Are you thinking that Mitchell is the play that you want to build around today? And I guess I'll also ask you a little bit of a Sophie's choice question up top. If you had to choose one between Mitchell and Gobert, 2 guys who should be fairly obvious for people playing the slate, but also going to be very highly owned, which of those guys would you want to lean towards?
Yeah, so oddly enough, right now, I have slightly more Gobert than I have of Mitchell, but these are 2 guys that are both in 50+% of my lineups. I'm having a real difficult time getting away from either one of them. You expect Gobert to soak up as many center minutes as he possibly can. Donovan Mitchell is going to have an infinite amount of opportunities to shoot the ball, which is great in DFS. So I can't see getting away from, I don't have a path to get away from either one of those guys very easily, where I think it starts to get a little bit easier if you try to get light on some of the guys from the other game.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And certainly Utah getting a pretty big pace up going against New Orleans, a team, but we don't expect to change much on that front with this time off. New Orleans, one of the fastest paced teams in the league. The Jazz, very slow. They're probably going to meet in the middle. And it's a nice little total for the Jazz today, just under 112 implied points. Let's talk through some more of the Jazz here because there are some machinations for sure because of Bojan being out of the rotation. Does mean that we should see a Royce O'Neal start today. We know the deal with him, not a high usage guy on the year, just under 14% usage. It's not his game. It's not something you can expect from him, but he is a player who should see a good amount of minutes here. Price is up for him for the most part, it looks like industry wide. So Alex, I'll ask you, Royce O'Neal, is this a guy that you would want at all, or is the fact that he's priced up for his minutes increase enough to get you right off of him right away?
I think that, he's probably a decent play. As far as value, he's a lot more expensive than I would have imagined. So he doesn't really help you in that respect. But he's going to play 30 minutes, and there's some guys on this slate that are going to be heavily owned that have very questionable minutes caps. So we'll get to those guys. But Royce O'Neal, in comparison, seems like a really safe play. But we know that he doesn't really fill the stat sheet, so I'm not super excited about him.
Josh, how are you feeling about Royce? Because he is a guy who has a reasonable price point, ownership on him, not looking too onerous, even though he is going to be getting those minutes. We have him under a little bit under 15%, it looks like on... Actually, I got his usage and ownership backwards initially, but usage under 10%, ownership under 14%. So Josh, I'll ask you, Royce O'Neal, is he a guy that you're seeing yourself landing on at all or with the field or under it?
I'm actually over the field right now. I just really like targeting the Jazz Pelicans game in general. And on a situation like today, I think today's a great day to bet on minutes, even more so than usual. And today is one of those days where there are a lot of question marks in minutes. I don't really think there is one for Royce O'Neal. Now, I also don't think he's very good in terms of DFS output on a per minute basis. I'm going to take a chance on an outlier performance from Royce O'Neal just because I think he might be out there a lot. If he can get his hands on a couple steals, that's the type of thing that I'm looking for. I'm not expecting Royce O'Neal to go out and drop 25 or something, but if he can put up the stats on the peripheral, the rebounds, the assists, maybe a couple steals, maybe a sneaky block or two, that's the way he's going to fill it up. I'm hoping today is that kind of day.
We're going to keep breaking down the rest of this game here. Of course, 2-game slate today, so we're going to probably luxuriate a little more on all these items before, or I guess while you listen to us. Go to our Awesemo_com Twitter handle and check out the pinned tweet on there. We have a big giveaway going to reflect the NBA season starting up. So some free memberships on the line for that one. The details are all in the pinned tweet, so make sure to check that out. And also be aware of all the free content we have going on. Today, there is the MMA Top Fighters tool. Looks like it's free. MLB player rankings as well, also free today in terms of our usual premium content. Take advantage of those and make sure to keep your eyes peeled for our Twitter handle as well, which does announce our free premium content. I just want to make sure I hit that for our fine social media folks working so hard behind the scenes. Here's another guy we need to talk about on the Jazz, Mike Conley. Really not been great this year for the most part, though did show some signs of life before the games stopped there and crushed all of our souls. But Conley's still a guy who really seems due for positive regression on his shooting just 40% on the year. The assist rate still mostly there, and have a little more time with the ball in his hands without Bojan, at least theoretically. So where are you guys with Mike Conley? Josh, I'll ask you first because Conley he's not unowned. He's certainly going to have some people with him, but he is a guy who's not going to probably pop up a ton on optimizers.
He's popping up a ton for me, that's for sure. I am quite a bit over the field on Conley, and this sort of goes back to the whole Royce O'Neal theory. I just like targeting the Jazz and the Pelicans in general, and Conley is going to benefit also with Bojan being out. He's going to be out there for 30-plus minutes. I'd be shocked if he wasn't. It's really important for them to continue to get minutes with this starting five, what we think is going to be the starting five of, Conley, Mitchell, Ingles, O'Neal, Gobert. That's really hard to do when they don't really play together. I think they've played together like 40 possessions on the season, that specific combination of five guys. I think they need to see that now before they get to the playoffs. So I think Conley plays a huge allotment, and if he's 6,200, I'm going to cross my fingers and hope he could look a little bit more like last year's Conley or 2 years ago Conley than this year's Conley.
Yeah, I'm intrigued to see what happens. A little time off can certainly right things, and they need him. They really do need him, as Josh mentioned. So, Alex, I want to hear your thoughts here because the Conley projection that you have is pretty generous for him, I think, based on some of the ones that I've seen around today. And it's still not a great one, still not one that's going to make him pop up a bunch. But where do you land with Mike Conley? And also, what are your thoughts about playing with Donovan Mitchell, where I think it looks okay because of the Pelicans' pace and the lack of Bojan. But what are you thinking about Conley and that option with Mitchell?
I think that Conley is a good option for sure. He's someone that will fit in any lineup at his price point of around 6K. And he stands to take more shots with Bogdanovich out. I don't know if it'll be as great for assists because I imagine he's going to be playing more alongside Joe Ingles, who has more ball handling capabilities than Bogdanovich. So all in all, I think Conley's a solid play, but he's not really someone I'm building around today.
Speaking of building around, there is one player we did talk about, Gobert Mitchell, both guys going to be highly owned. Another player who maybe surprisingly going to be one of the chalk plays on the slate and either a spot to lean in on, I would think, or get away from. Jordan Clarkson, a man who's had a lot of usage off the bench, was a little cold before the games ended for the NBA, but for the most part has looked pretty good in a Jazz uniform, has spiked some upside. This matchup against New Orleans does seem like one that should fit him pretty well. So Alex, how are you feeling about Jordan Clarkson at being, let's say, 50%, maybe even 60% owned?
Yeah, that kind of ownership, I think that it's worth considering just building someone else. It depends a little bit on the tournament that you're playing in because like the Millionaire Maker, for example, the cost benefit of fading a chalk guy is a lot higher because you're not trying to get a good score. You need like the optimal. And fading a guy like Clarkson helps you beat more of the lineups out there. So I think Clarkson is he's a good play as far as value, but if you have him, your lineup's going to be a lot more duplicated, which on tonight's slate is an issue.
Josh, how are you landing with Clarkson? Are you taking him as a potential, I want to say a free square because this is Jordan Clarkson. You can easily go 1 for 12 and disappoint a lot of people tonight who were hoping to win that $1 million. But that much ownership on Clarkson, but a nice price on him. How do you shake out with that? Damn it, I said it. Shakeout came too early for me. Go ahead.
There's a follow-up joke there for me that I'm going to let go. I have a little bit more on FanDuel right now just because of the way positions are structured. Being forced to have 2 shooting guards makes it a little different. I'm still under the field there. I'm massively under the field on DraftKings. On my last run, I have 15%. We have him in at 50. I just don't see this as a spot that's going to help me win the type of GPP that I'm trying to win today, which is the milli on DK. There are many ways that game can go, and Clarkson not getting to value because it happens to be everybody else from Utah would not shock me in the slightest, especially with him not starting. And if they're competing, I'd be surprised to see him in a closing lineup for the Jazz, even with Bojan out. And if that's the case, then I really don't have much interest. 50% is too much. Play him in cash, though. Have a blast.
Alex, how about on FanDuel, where we got a question from our boy Andrew Mocked, one of our regulars here, asking about the differences between FanDuel and DraftKings. And the price is actually pretty much the same between Clarkson on both sites, but you are getting a 20% ownership discount if you go to him on FanDuel. So does that make him more appetizing for you, Alex, on FanDuel, where maybe a little too much ownership on him on DraftKings, where he's going to be 50% plus?
So FanDuel is interesting because you have to have 2 at each position, and that really changes the strategy. So on FanDuel, it becomes more about like who are you fading to get Clarkson in addition to like what is his value. And today that's a lot because for some reason Paul George is at shooting guard and he's one of my favorite plays of the night. I'm gonna have a tough time leaving him off the FanDuel roster. And then you got some other great options too. So because he's kind of the popular value pick, I'm definitely looking to punt other positions just to try to do something different.
And let's, I guess, close out the Jazz here. Josh, is there anybody else that you seem to have any interest in at all? I know before we came on the air, we talked briefly about Emmanuel Mudiay, who popped up for me just because he's minimum priced. And I think we do have him currently with Alex's stat lines, have him getting at least a few minutes there. So that might make him pop up. But anybody else amongst these guys, a George Niang, who's nicknamed the minivan, about as elite as you can get. But all these other guys, I mean, Tony Bradley, I know Alex has got a little bit of him before, maybe over enthusiastic about that night we didn't get to play him before the coronavirus killed us all. But not bad phrasing. But anyway, Josh, any of these other Jazz players popping up for you meaningfully?
Yeah, you mentioned one guy, and that's George Niang. There are not a lot of places to go for like super low owned people today. And I think that George Niang should be one of them. He was playing before we got shut down for the coronavirus. He was a part of the Jazz rotation, playing about 12 minutes a game. We now have Bojan Bogdanovic out of there. I think it's a little bit easier for the Jazz to get George Niang on the floor, given everybody else that's left, than it is slightly for someone like Mudiay to get on the floor. You can slide Niang to the 3 or the 4. He can fit with any one of the other guards. He's a pretty solid shooter as well. It wouldn't shock me to see him play 18 to 20 minutes, soak up a little of that Bojan time, and get kind of hot from 3. That's sort of what they're going to be looking for. And as a guy that's 3,300 at 4% ownership, I like that quite a bit on the off chance that he just happens to be good. No one's there, and there aren't a lot of places to go where guys are going to be low owned. This is the spot that I'm taking. So I am quite a bit above the field. I'm not getting too crazy. Let's be clear here. It's George Niang and he's 4% owned. But you can get a couple multiples over that and give yourself a chance. And again, I'm trying to win the milli. That's the kind of guy that can do that for you.
Yeah, and as Josh mentioned, he is a reasonable approximation. Obviously, not the amount of time on the court, not as many shots, but is shooting 42% from deep, just like Bojan Bogdanovic, who's actually a little bit closer to 41. So maybe that does give him a little more opportunity to see the court. Alex, how about you? I think you disagreed a little bit on Yang, and maybe we're a little more Mudiay forward. And I know you said the Tony Bradley thing. So any other Jazz guys popping up for you at all, Alex?
Yeah, I like Mudiay. He's definitely a good per-minute producer. And with Joe Ingles probably moving to the starting lineup tonight for Bojan Bogdanovic, I think that paves the way for Mudiay to get those minutes at the backup point. So I think that he should see a decent amount of minutes. They can put him on the floor with pretty much any lineup. So I think that I feel pretty good about Mudiay as kind of like a counter chalk move, because I think some of the other like really popular plays tonight might be risky.
And let's move over to the Pelican side. And guys, please help us out. Hit that like button. Of course, really an all-new season of Live Before Lock for us. And we appreciate you guys turning out in droves. Over 2,100 people in here right now. So thank you guys for joining us. First of all, really thanks on behalf of all of us for coming back. But please do hit that like button because it helps us continue to get seen by more people as all the sports come back. This New Orleans side, we got news right before we came on the air. Zion Williamson will play reportedly in quick, short bursts. So seems relatively like what he's normally done. Zion, of course, coming off a personal emergency, missed some conditioning time in the bubble, but is a play that on paper looks pretty good if you're giving him around 30 minutes and allotment there. Zion is a guy I have a good amount of. I do have a good amount of Melly as well. And Josh, I'll ask you here. Zion, I've heard you debate in favor of him against Lofty in some of our recent shows here. So always make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any of those things, including that startup special that Josh Lofty and Greg Ehrenberg had. But Zion here looks like the top projected Pelican, perhaps, depending upon what you're using. So where do you land with Zion?
So my opinions on Zion are different than the way that I'm playing him today. Love him in actual basketball, not getting there from a DFS perspective. Quite a bit under the field on FanDuel. I think AD is just my main priority there, as is AD for the public. And then on DK, we're only projecting him for 16% ownership. I have less than that. That makes me a little nervous, but the way that the information's coming out about him right now, the short burst, he may be on a minutes limit, I just don't want to mess with that in a spot where it's not as if I think he's wildly underpriced. Like 7,500 is about where I think he should be. I just don't want to go too crazy here. I assume we might even see his ownership creep up a little bit higher than that just because of his name and the fact that we've been gone for so long. I don't want to be there tonight. This is one, though, where I'm happy to be wrong in that if he goes out there and plays out of his mind, I'm cool with it because I'll be watching and that'll just be entertaining.
No, that's fair. And you do want to see Zion be healthy, but certainly some risk. He is a very large man. Throwing him in, giving a little too much work can be problematic for him, and they don't want to risk that. That's a very important part of their future. But Alex, where do you land with Zion? And it's worth noting too, as I think some of the guys in the chat are saying right now, a little bit of a different equation on FanDuel where he is projected for a bit more ownership and I guess maybe a little less fear of the injury he has for the FanDuel ownership so far. But Alex, where do you land with Zion? Do you think he's valuable, or would you want to go to a guy like Nikhil or Brandon Ingram, who does get quite a bit from whenever Zion is either unavailable or just is on a tight minutes limit?
I have to agree with the guys in the chat. I think on FanDuel, he definitely looks better than DraftKings because there just aren't a lot of power forwards that have value tonight. And the chance that he's going to be one of the top 2 scoring power forwards is pretty high. Because all the other guys aside from Anthony Davis are kind of punt plays. So then it just becomes a matter of hitting your other picks. So I don't hate him on FanDuel, but he's not my favorite play. On DraftKings, I'm probably going to avoid him entirely. And my logic here is that a lot of people probably aren't paying as much attention as us who are glued to Twitter all day and hearing about all these updates. I think what the short burst thing means is he'll play 6 shifts of like 4 minutes each probably. So that's just not like enough time for a huge like 50-point plus performance. I mean, he did it in his first game in the same situation, but I'm not banking on it.
Does that give you more interest in a guy like Nikhil and Melli, Alex, or Ingram, as I mentioned? Because Melli has been the guy who's been starting with Zion out of the bubble for the scrimmages they've had so far. And we have seen him have a little more potential in games where Zion was out in the regular season before the game stopped. And Ingram, too, the ownership on him has come down enough, in part because of Zion being rumored to play or expected to play. So do any of these guys get a big bump for you, Alex, or is it just, you'll take what you get?
I like Melli as I liked him before anyway, but he usually backs up Favors, so I'm not like that much more interested now. Of course, we could see maybe Kenrich Williams or Jackson Hayes enter the rotation for a couple of shifts because of this Zion rotation. I don't know how much it will affect Melli because I'm expecting him and Favors to probably split the 48 or close to it.
And we are getting actually a couple questions about Derek Favors, so we'll transition there. Favors on DraftKings, I really don't love the price, though. Boy, here we go. Revenge game, so we'll say that so the chat can feel good about us knowing former teams. But, Favors, I just don't see it at the price on DraftKings. On FanDuel, I'm not playing a ton of lineups on FanDuel tonight, so I'm checking the ownership real fast. Favors, I could see you maybe thinking he's worthwhile, but you're giving up that center spot for a guy who isn't Gobert and maybe doesn't have some of the appeal and the upside to get more minutes like a Zubac, or if you believe in Joakim Noah, who we'll talk about in a bit. So Alex, on FanDuel, do you see Favors being useful, or on DraftKings?
He's like kind of a fringe option tonight, I think, because he's just kind of expensive for what he does on the court. His usage the past part of the season where Zion has been in the lineup has been about 12%. He gets a lot of rebounds, though. So not a great fantasy player right now. So if he's cheap, I'd be on him, but he's not. So I'm not having him as a core play tonight.
Josh, how are you feeling about these Pelicans bigs here, where you have, again, Derek Favors, you have Melli, you have Ingram, who's not really a big, but does play a little more four with Zion being limited. Any of these guys jump out to you or have a little more appeal because of Zion being limited to those short bursts?
Depends on the site, but I do have quite a bit of Brandon Ingram on both sites, so that one doesn't matter to me at all. Favors, I'm relatively neutral on DraftKings. 5,800 is probably just an overprice for what he brings to the table. But on FanDuel, I like him a lot. 5,400, it's sort of like you either like Gobert or you're hoping that you get center right. I like Favors a lot. The 5-man starting lineup of the Pelicans is like plus a gajillion when they're together, including Zion. Lonzo, Drew, Ingram, Zion, Gobert has been insane. And I think that they need to ride that lineup if they want to make sure that they're in one of the either 8 seed or the 9 seed so they can push themselves to the playoffs. And that kind of circles me back to Zion. I think we could possibly see him play more in the second half than the first half if the leverage of that game picks up. If they find out that they don't need him because it's a 20-point game either way, then it's pretty easy to back off of Zion in either direction. But wins are paramount for the Pelicans. They cannot afford to drop games right now. So as the leverage of the game and as the importance of the game moves forward, you might just see him pick up a normal rotation through the fourth quarter instead of only getting a 4-minute burst. Something that came to me while I was talking.
No, it's a good point. It is a bit of a playoff vibe for some of these teams, especially the Pelicans, who, you can argue maybe shouldn't have even been in the mix for the bubble, for especially people who wanted less teams in there. But they are in there now. They have a chance to make the playoffs. Certainly, the league wouldn't mind the Pelicans getting in there with Zion. But we'll see how that all goes. A couple guys on the Pelicans we should hit on before we move on to the Battle of LA that takes place in Florida, the great irony of it all. But let's talk about Lonzo Ball, Drew Holiday, two guys I really didn't land on a bunch. I got a little more Lonzo. Drew at his price point on DraftKings, I just don't see it. And then you also have Josh Hart and JJ Redick, who are value plays. Hart certainly a little more able to contribute in a variety of ways. Redick, I think, an interesting GPP option. Any of these guys, Josh, popping up for you in a meaningful way?
Let's see. Relatively neutral on Lonzo and Drew. I have them in the mid 30s. So I guess a little higher on Drew. Not much Josh Hart at all. I think he's going a little bit heavier owned, particularly with Redick back. That's also not a person that I have right now. I just don't really know where they're going to go in between Redick and Hart. Probably the hot hand, if we're being honest. And I don't really know how to predict hot hands as much as I want to be able to do that. I can't. I do have quite a bit of Lonzo on FanDuel, though, at 7,900. And to me, that's just a tale of a position that I think there are only 3 relevant options. So I have all of my FanDuel exposure essentially split to 3 guys: Ball, Conley, and oddly enough, Reggie Jackson.
Ooh, Reggie Jackson, yeah, should be getting some minutes today. We'll talk about that with the LA game in a second. But Patrick Beverley was at shoot-around, didn't participate. We're still not sure if he's going to be in tonight, but it does seem like he's trending towards not playing. Alex, let's close out the Pelicans for you. The backcourt or some of these cheap value guards, any of them landing for you in a meaningful way with the lineups that you're building right now?
I think Josh Hart's solid. I mean, he's not like a trendy play because there's no injury that really makes him pop out and he's not starting. So I think maybe people will overlook him, but the price is good. He's averaged a good amount of minutes on the season and in the games before the break. So I think I'm seeing him as a good value play compared to some of the risky guys in the next game.
And Josh, I know one guy you've been itching to talk about was Nikhil Alexander-Walker. So you're talking about that in Slack. A lot of questions about Nikhil, given the fact that people just want to see him play. He's a young guy. People love young guys. But I'm going to assume Nikhil didn't make your lineups at all.
Yeah, that one got asked a couple times in chat today, and I truly don't understand it. I don't know if that's getting like steamed up from somewhere else. It just didn't make a lot of sense to me. He didn't play this year. Like, he's not a part of anything that they do unless half the team's hurt. He played 2.5 minutes from the game they played on February 11th through the shutdown. I don't get the sense that a team that's doing everything in their power to make the playoffs is suddenly going to integrate a rookie when everyone is healthy. So as I say this now, I'm sure he's about to print somebody $1 million at like 0.5% or something along those lines. But yeah, he shouldn't even be projected to play a single minute.
Yeah, you've got your Frank Jacksons, your Etuan Moores, if they do want to dig deep on the bench. And the guys we talked about, Redick, Hart, all of them in the mix. So I agree. I don't see Nikhil happening. But Alex, you're same page, right? Unless you've been hiding your Nikhil Alexander-Walker love this entire time, really.
Yeah,
well.
I'm about to find out why I'm a moron.
Well, I think that I also, like Josh, don't think he's going to play in this game. But I don't think it's crazy to have him on a millionaire maker lineup because he has a really good per minute production. And there are going to be some rookies that over this 3-month hiatus really like step up their game. And that wouldn't be something we'd really be privy to at this point. So there is a world where he could succeed, but I'm definitely not banking on that.
Yeah, I get the concept for the millionaire makers of the world. If you're throwing in your 150 lineups, maybe you want to throw it in there just as a literal lottery ticket, but that's what it is, and you got to treat it as such. Guys, help us out. Hit that like button, and you got about half an hour left, so if you haven't yet, go to awesemo.com/join and use the promo code RESTART because that's going to get you half off your first month of Awesemo Plus. And that is access to every sport: NBA, MLB, PGA, MMA, NASCAR. These have all been going on all quarantine. A lot of us, Josh and I were talking before the show, our love of PGA, which makes us the best best of DFS with the best of roulette. And there's a lot of things out there that you can enjoy. So please use that promo code RESTART at awesemo.com/join and go Brendan Todd. That's the one that I think we all agree about. Let's keep going to this Clippers game. Clippers and the Lakers. It's a big one. A lot of question marks here. Again, we still don't know the status of Patrick Beverley. We do know that there's not going to be a Montrezl Harrell sighting. There will also not be Lou Williams. He is too busy enjoying the chicken wing flavors of the world, and now he's in quarantine for an extended period of time. But shout out Lou. Lou is the winner of that whole situation, I think, especially vis-a-vis Kendrick Perkins. Either way, Clippers are playing the Lakers. It's a big game. Doesn't really matter much for the Clippers seeding. Probably doesn't matter much for the Lakers seeding either. But you can tell LeBron is going to come out with a bit of an edge, knowing what we know of him. Let's talk to the Clippers side, Alex. You mentioned Paul George. He looks like a monster play on all the sites today. The price is good. As you mentioned on FanDuel, position maybe a little bit weird, but or you're giving away some things to go to him. But he does look great. Paul George has looked good in the scrimmages. I'm in on him all the way. Alex, how are you with Paul George?
Yeah, I think I liked what the morning show guys, Slaffy and Greg said about him, where it's like with some of the guys out, they're going to stagger. With Lou Williams and Harrell out, they're going to stagger George and Kawhi because they're the two usage players. And that's going to make both of them better. So I really like both Paul George and Kawhi Leonard today.
Yeah, I think that seems right for me. And Josh, where are you landing with the Clippers stars? And tell me about your feelings on Paul George and also Kawhi, who I've heard on a couple Sharp podcasts, a couple of the Nate Duncan style podcasts of the world. I honestly have listened to so many within the past week that I'm not remembering which. But the degenerative, leg quad condition does seem like a spot where I don't know you could fully trust Kawhi's minutes. And with him being 40% owned, that would give me some cause for concern. I'm in a game that doesn't matter. But where are you landing with Kawhi and Paul George?
So I thought I was going to be a lot higher on both of those guys than I actually am. Essentially holding hands with the field right now. 50 to 60% of Paul George, 30 to 40% of Kawhi Leonard coming in on both sides. That's FanDuel, that's DraftKings. It's kind of the same story on both. I'm having a difficult time sifting through them and making a selection between them. So I'm just hoping that the rest of my plays are what get me there. And in theory, I'm kind of happy with that. Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, we're not going to be surprised if any one of those guys are the essential sort of stars that you need today to go off. That's not where my bread's going to get buttered by winning this contest, by having a stand on one of those guys. So I think my best case scenario is being more correct elsewhere and kind of just hanging out with what I think are properly owned stars. Also, by the way, Paul George is a shooting guard. That's why he's at shooting guard. 59% of his minutes this season played at the 2 for the Clippers. So for once, FanDuel, to me, has him appropriately positioned.
That's fair. He's more like small forward number 2, but I'll allow it. You could get this one, counselor, but next time be careful. Is what I'm gonna say for that. It's
also really helpful because the last thing we needed was LeBron, Kawhi, Brandon Ingram, and Paul George all at small forward on FanDuel with just a ghost town at shooting guard.
Fair point. Yeah, Paul George, shooting guard there. And yeah, all right, I think that's a fair argument. We do have some important machinations here to talk about. People in the chat wanting to talk about Reggie Jackson. Of course, there is as I mentioned, no Lou Williams. We don't know about Patrick Beverley, but I think currently leaning towards him not playing, it looks like. Reggie Jackson, high usage in Detroit, not quite as high of a usage in Los Angeles as you might expect, but it seems plausible he can get a pretty good swath of minutes here, Alex. So Reggie Jackson, what is the solution for you with him at a price that seems pretty fair for a guy who could potentially see high 20s, maybe even 30 minutes?
So, this is all contingent on Patrick Beverley. Since they reported he was going to be out yesterday, I'm kind of taking that as the best or the most likely scenario. So I'm expecting Reggie to start. And I don't terribly like him today because, the thing with Reggie is his skill set isn't really that complementary with the rest of the Clippers team, because he's more of a ball in his hands, high usage guy. So he just really doesn't have a complementary skill set to Paul George and Kawhi. So I think Landry Shamet is the more likely guy to be in the closing lineups for the half and the end of the game. So he's really not a great fantasy player, but I also think he's not going to really be owned heavily tonight. So I'm really pivoting off Reggie to Landry tonight.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, Landry projected for under 10% ownership. It looks like on all the sites today. And he also, I think he had COVID at some point and then cleared it. And, he's expected to be at mostly full health. And another guy in the Clippers who had COVID, we can talk about in a second, Ivica Zubac. But Josh, how do you feel about that? Reggie Jackson should pick up some minutes, but Landry Shamet, I think that's a pretty valid point by Alex. We don't need him to be the ball dominant guard in that closing group if this game is tight. It could be a very logical move to go to Shamet. So where do you land with that, Josh?
Yeah, so much of this depends on Patrick Beverley. If Beverley is out and we don't have Lou Williams, then I think that Reggie Jackson can come out here and do his best Lou Williams approximation. He's going to play enough minutes that I don't think it really matters, especially on FanDuel where he's 3,800. Like, if Patrick Beverley is out, you're not going to feel bad about playing Reggie Jackson on FanDuel. He's just like, his price is too low for it to matter. 4,600 is something you need to pay attention to a little bit on DK. I really think that he could just cook this second unit. The Jazz being a little thinner also doesn't help. Like, if Moutier really is getting those minutes, not exactly a guy I'm worried about stopping Reggie Jackson. So it's a tough balance for me. Right now I have a ton of Reggie Jackson, and I think that I'm going to take a minute away from him to just have like a lot of Reggie Jackson and then maybe have a slightly higher amount than the 0 Landry Shamet that I have right now. Because anytime Alex says that kind of stuff, I immediately think I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah, usually not the best idea to question Alex, who is the top player in the world, for a good reason. But Reggie Jackson, I do agree a little bit with your take about him being a Lou Williams type. And you mentioned Emmanuel Moutier, Jordan Clarkson in that backcourt. Not exactly the vintage Pistons defense there that's going to keep Reggie from doing what he does, but we'll see. Another injury.
By the way, Reggie Jackson is not going up against Emmanuel Moutier. So ignore everything that I just said about that illustrious Jazz matchup that does not exist on this slate.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I just listened to you like an idiot. I was just like, oh, Josh is always right. I trust him.
Guys, I haven't talked about basketball in 4 months. You're lucky I remember that Reggie Jackson's on the Clippers.
Well, I mean, either way, I think we can all agree he wouldn't have a difficult time against Emmanuel Moutier and Jordan Clarkson.
The Lakers are thin with some of their backcourt injuries. I think that plays better for Reggie Jackson's second unit, not the Utah Jazz.
Yeah, that's, the brain function, you guys, has to come back a little bit when you're not doing these shows and bouncing around every single day.
I'm still trying to remember baseball players' names.
Yeah, and the new ones, too. Their names just get sillier. Did you see Chadwick Tromp the other day? Like, what? How was that a name?
I thought it was a joke name, honestly.
Classic Chadwick Tromp hitting in the 9-hole. Let's talk about Ivica Zubac here and Joakim Noah. Joakim Noah earlier in the day looked like he'd be a very chalky play. Has been getting around 15 to 20 minutes during these scrimmages so far for the Clippers. Also, a lot of these guys have talked about it on our various shows. I think Lafayette and Greg talked about it a little bit this morning. I know Josh talked about it as well in one of the streams that he did with Lafayette at some point. Joakim Noah coming off of an Achilles injury, he sliced it in a hot tub. Is that what it was?
He cut it on evidently the outside of like an ice bath.
Okay.
I didn't want to research it too far because I didn't need to see like an accidental picture that he put on Instagram of his entire Achilles tendon just hanging off the back of his leg. Because he would probably like go about his day like it didn't happen.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, Achilles injuries like that, not the best. But Josh, I'll ask you then, because you're now talking about Noah. If you had to choose between Zubac and Noah, which do you have a lean between them? Because I'm feeling Zubac just because I think Noah's going to get a little more. But Zubac is coming off of coronavirus too, and he's talked openly about his conditioning not quite being there. I think these guys could end up just being, about 20 minutes each, and maybe you see a little more minutes for Marcus Morris or even JaMychal Green. But where are you landing with Zubac versus Noah, Josh?
I am of the opinion that I'm willing to not win a single dollar tonight if Joakim Noah is the reason that it happens. This is an old man who doesn't play a lot. He has not played in like 17 months or something along those lines. And I just can't expect him to come out here and be okay and just soak up minutes. I know he's nuts. That's not where I want to be tonight. I think Ivica Zubac is actually good. The question is, how long can he be on the floor? This is the perfect matchup for him. The Lakers are one of the biggest teams, if not the biggest team, other than maybe now the Blazers, now that everybody's healthy, but they run traditional centers constantly. This fits Zubac perfectly. If he can soak those minutes up, that's great. He's actually not bad also. It's not like he's going to get played off the floor because of it. I would rather lean on Zubac. It doesn't seem like enough people are going in that particular direction. To me, I would rather take that bet and hope for the best. I just don't know what else they do at the 5. I think JaMychal Green gets absolutely decimated if he's out there. I do have him projected for a couple minutes. They might have to rely on Marcus Morris. Like, can he be strong enough to hold that? Maybe. That would be the most interesting thing. They haven't really messed around with Marcus Morris at the 5 yet. They didn't really have a ton of time to do that either. No Noah for me. If he goes crazy, just assume that I'm not at the top.
So no Noah at all, just to confirm.
0.
All right, so Alex, let's throw it to you because you do have a decent projection on Joakim Noah, but he is still not going to really project to have the ceiling you might need to take down a GPP if he's getting the minutes that I think we're expecting. And then definitely based off your projection, which of course you can get Awesemo's projections for yourself with that promo code RESTART at awesemo.com/join. But Alex, where do you land with this? Are you team Zubac? Are you team Noah? Or are you team, I'm just going to go somewhere else because both these guys are going to be kind of owned and I have no idea what's going to go down?
I got a couple updates first. So we got the starting lineups. So Ingles and O'Neal were starting like we thought. And then the Pelicans lineup was pretty much what we expected as well. So nothing that interesting there. And SuperDraft's almost full, so make sure to get in some entries. All right, so Noah, I think that he's going to be the backup center for sure. Like, I'm not worried about him not playing, and he's a good point per minute guy. But I really do think that JaMychal Green will be closing out the half in the game, picking up some extra minutes at center. In previous games where Montrezl Harrell sat, JaMychal Green was the backup center. And he is the more relied on player in the Clippers organization. And to boot, I mean, at the end of the Lakers halves, Anthony Davis usually is the center. They take JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard off the court. So I think JaMychal Green is the logical play here. I'm not really worried about value because when these guys like Noah and Zubac do well, it's going to push up the score you need to win too. But JaMychal Green is a little bit higher priced, lower percentage play, but I think the ownership makes it worth it.
Okay, interesting call there. So yeah, I think there's certainly some arguments to be made. Alex laid it out about as clearly as you can, and there will be ownership, certainly higher ownership on both Noah and Zubac industry-wide relative to JaMychal Green. So if he does get those minutes, could certainly be valuable. And Alex, I'll ask you too, Marcus Morris, we've kind of talked about the possibility of him playing the 5, and his price is at one of those weird points where you could kind of get to him, and if he gets you a competent day, I could see it being a way just to be different enough in a tournament. Where do you land with Marcus Morris? Is he somebody who you have in that mix too, where maybe you get away from Zubac or you get away from Noah and you go to Marcus Morris?
Yeah, I think Marcus Morris is a very solid play. I mean, he's averaged 26 minutes over the 5 games before the break, so he's getting the minutes. We got the injuries that open up even more of a role for him. And, I mean, the Lakers play pretty big, so he's probably going to be out there a lot. So I like him. The only thing is he's not that great a permanent producer since he joined the Clippers because they do have a lot of shooters around him. So I have moderate expectations for him.
All right, let's talk through this Lakers side. So guys, hit the like button as the last team we have to talk about in this 2-game slate as we somehow have magically already gone 45 minutes. So excited to have NBA back because you could really fill an hour. Oof, just real easy. Really easy to luxuriate with this. But we got LeBron, we got Anthony Davis. We also have a lot of moving pieces here for the Lakers because Rajon Rondo is hurt. Avery Bradley opted out. J.R. Smith is in the mix. And the sneakiest play of the day, Dion Waiters, right there, chock full of marijuana gummies, ready to launch himself into the game. But let's talk about the stars first. Josh, with you, LeBron, Anthony Davis, do you have a lean here? Because normally we don't like to talk about the defense. It doesn't matter, but hard to not look at Anthony Davis and think, I just don't know how the Clippers can stop him.
I kind of just want to eat an edible and see the game through Dion Waiters' eyes tonight, but that's neither here nor there. As of right now, I have a lot more Anthony Davis and a relatively minimal amount of LeBron James as far as LeBron James goes. That's certainly on DK. On FanDuel, little bit more LeBron, but still just a massive amount more of Anthony Davis. The Clippers have a lot of guys that match up against LeBron James. They don't really have those guys that match up against Anthony Davis. So I don't normally look at things like that, but today feels like a more specific time to look at it. I'm going to lean towards Anthony Davis, just sort of filling up the stat sheet.
A little bit cheaper, though it does seem like LeBron gets a bit more of an uptick because of no Rondo out there. Somebody has to create the assist. That is LeBron's job. So, Alex, I'll ask you, do you have a lean between LeBron and Anthony Davis? And also, do you find yourself playing both together in a meaningful amount, or is it just a little bit too onerous with the prices being where they are?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that they're both expensive enough that neither one is really like a tremendous value play. So that makes it so I probably wouldn't have lineups with them together, but it's not because of any like correlation. It's just that, as you're saying, this is hard to build that lineup. So I think they're both tremendous plays. You guys watching don't need us to tell you to pick Anthony Davis and LeBron James. I mean, they're two of the best players in the NBA. So as far as spin-up options, they're probably the best on tonight's slate. And the salaries are about right for them.
Also, shout out to all you guys again. I know I gave this little thank you before, but just shy of 2,700 people. So we're basically right back where we were before quarantine. So really, thank you guys truly. If you're watching either at home or at work or on your phone or on the toilet, wherever you're watching with us right now, we appreciate you, regardless of your level of clothedness and all of that. But really,
no, we need to get that like number up. 340 on 2,700 people. That is not nearly enough. That number should be 500 or more. Insanity. Hit that thumbs up. We're bringing you the goods, people.
Yeah, listen to the man. Hit that like button. Do it for Alex. We don't want to make Alex bully you guys around. Give everybody wedgies to get likes like he does.
we only get paid if we hit 500 likes. So, guys, you're taking food out of my wife's mouth.
Yeah, and dogs can get coronavirus now, so I'm deeply concerned about that. I saw that today. So we need to get paid in order to take care of my dogs in case. Let's talk about the fringe players.
502 now. 516.
Wow.
See? Ask and ye shall receive.
God bless you guys. You guys get results. You guys rule. Thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate it. All right, let's talk about the also rans of the Lakers since we talked about the stars. And I feel like the centers seem like a reasonable place given that we did, Alex, you mentioned JaVale McGee, you mentioned Dwight Howard, also very value-focused plays similar to a Joakim Noah and actually cheaper than Ivica Zubac. So it is potentially, if these guys get the run or have an outlier day within their usual 15 to 20 minutes, they can do something. So McGee and Howard, Alex, do you feel like these guys are ones that could make a difference tonight? Because they're not very highly owned, but they're certainly cheap enough, and we know that they could be very productive per minute.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think they could be guys that go off, but they're not guys I'm going to be picking because, I mean, they just don't get the minutes. JaVale McGee over the season averaged 17 minutes as a starter. Dwight Howard, he averaged 19, but over the last 5 games before the break, he was getting fewer minutes because they added Markieff Morris to kind of clogged up the rotation. So I think that I just don't think they're going to get the minutes, and I think people are going to pick them. So I don't really like picking McGee or Howard.
Josh, how about you? Do you have any lean for these Lakers big men, or do you also feel like they're just not worthwhile relative to what they'll be owned at?
Yeah, I don't really have either one of them, but it does create this interesting chicken and the egg theory in that the Lakers know that the Clippers are thin in the front court. Does this become a time where you want to play JaVale McGee and or Dwight Howard more minutes because they just can't simply guard those guys all that long with the corpse of Joakim Noah, however long Ivica Zubac can be out there, and whatever you think else could happen, whether it's Pat or JaMychal Green or Marcus Morris at the 5, like all of those things seem like they could end up being better for the Lakers. My lean is that the Lakers don't change anything about it. JaVale plays like 16 minutes. Dwight plays like 10. They piece it all together, and neither of those guys end up being all that interesting. It does make me a little nervous just because guys like JaVale and Dwight are good per minute scorers. So if JaVale does happen to pick up a couple extra minutes, his score can skyrocket. And if he's playing well, like he's the type of guy that could really make that score grow. For now, I'm not really going that direction.
All right, that seems fair. And I guess the rest of the value guys, people in the YouTube chat, one guy in particular who I lost, I think it was David in the chat, very, very much likes Alex Caruso. And of course, Alex, you're here. I mean, you are the expert. I feel like having some similar looks maybe give you a bit of an insight into his world. And he could pick up some more minutes with no Bradley, more Rondo, but it's hard to see him being hyper productive, but he's going to be under 10% owned. So Alex, did you get any of your potential doppelganger, Alex Caruso?
I'm avoiding the Lakers guards tonight. honestly. Like, I just have no idea what the rotation is going to be because they brought in Dion Waiters. He hadn't played pre-suspension of play, I don't believe, but he could definitely be in the rotation now. J.R. Smith, he was signed over this break, and he's definitely a guy that has enough talent to be in the rotation, but will be in this game. So those two guys make it harder for me to get to Caruso. And then also throw in Quinn Cook. Quinn Cook has been the third string point guard for most of the season. I think some people are expecting Alex Caruso to step in and fill in Rondo's role, but I'm not really certain that's going to happen. Like, he's been out on the court as point guard a little bit, but a lot of those games that Rondo missed, it was Quinn Cook. So I just don't really feel confident in any of those guys.
And it's worth just kind of addressing him by name, but Danny Green, I feel like, is somebody who people may gravitate towards a bit more, knowing that he's in the rotation. He is a good defensive player. He can sometimes spike in upside, as we saw a couple times last year in the playoffs in particular. I don't have a ton of Danny Green just because the ownership doesn't seem great. And Alex, you kind of talked about the Lakers guards, but Danny Green doesn't rate for you at all either?
Danny Green is an exception to that, I think, because he's super, super cheap, like $3,500 on DraftKings. And, he's going to start and get 25 minutes probably. So he definitely could be that guy to get hot from three and win a tournament. So he's someone I'm going to have some exposure to. But we all know the struggles of rostering Danny Green.
Yeah, it certainly can be a spot that he leaves you hanging too much. And Josh, I'll ask you too, Danny Green, did you land anywhere close to the field with him? Or is he one of those guys too, you were just like, it's not worth the time?
Yeah, I'm not close to the field on Danny Green. I'm significantly above it.
Oh, okay. There you go.
This is sort of another one of those theories where I think Danny Green's just going to be out there. He fits any type of game in a situation where you have Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. Having someone with the defensive chops like Danny Green, I think, is a very important piece. Knowing that two guys in their backcourt are already out, I think that solidifies Danny Green quite a bit. So I'm going to try to bet a little bit on him just being in the game, sort of like I talked about earlier with Royce O'Neal. I'm kind of betting on Danny Green to be the Lakers version of Royce O'Neal. I also just thought of this. We missed an incredible marketing opportunity. Alex, you should have offered to go to Caruso's sister's wedding.
I did. Yeah, that's the thing is Alex Caruso was like, dude, what are you smoking, man?
It would have been so great. You just show up like, hi, I'm his proxy.
I'm just here. You're like when Saddam had body doubles, like just in case anybody wants to come after Alex Caruso, they have to go through you first.
People would have loved it. It would have been great. It would have been great press for the site.
Dude, there was about to be this FanDuel game in LA that everyone's invited to, and I was going to try to meet Alex Caruso, but everything got canceled because of COVID. So
it would have been so good. Like when Pete Davidson met Christian Yelich.
It could have been our first viral video to emerge here. Just you two doing the looking in a living mirror thing and doing the hand motions at the same
Spider-Man
time. There's a lot of options here we could have hit. I have to ask this because I'm playing a little bit. I assume I'm the only one, but like we joked about it. But Dion Waiters, like maybe like a little taste for the $1 million tournaments. No,
I don't know if he plays or not. Like the thing is, he was pretty good when he was in the rotation as a regular player like a year or two ago. So I actually don't hate it because, as you said, Chris, you're going to be one of the only ones. So you could be very well laughing at us with $1 million in your account tonight.
Yeah, you guys will see me disappear tomorrow with all that money in a suitcase. But look, Dion Waiters, I'm telling you, under 5% owned. He's looked good in the scrimmages so far. He looked good in Miami before his gummy debacle that led to Dion Waiters going apart. But imagine this scenario: LeBron on the bench, the Lakers have a nice lead. Dion Waiters heats up, LeBron laughing, doing that over laugh thing he does to like make a guy look good or bad. Like, come on, you could see it as part of one of the outcomes in a world of infinite outcomes. I know you can see it.
I don't know. I'm going to be going to Planet Dion Waiters with him, so I'm in for whatever he's doing today. But I also have him in one lineup and one lineup only.
Okay,
in
there we go.
300 across 2 sites.
I will take it, my friend. And I guess we got a couple of minutes here left to lock, so make sure you're getting your lineups in. Of course, 4 minutes left here for all of you guys before the games all lock, so take advantage of that. And make sure you're also taking advantage of the giveaway we have on our pinned tweet. You can win a year of Awesemo Plus NBA access if you follow the details on there, so check that out at Awesemo_com on Twitter. And guys, we got a few minutes here, so I guess the question that I'll ask, we can't predict everything here, but how does this night go sideways, Josh? Because there's a lot of chalky ownership, a lot of plays that we've talked about that we feel pretty good about. So where does it go wrong for a lot of people out there tonight?
Oh, that's easy. Patrick Beverley gets ruled in after lock. Anthony Davis gets ruled out. And that immediately makes everybody want to burn it all to the ground. Rudy Gobert gives everyone the coronavirus for the second time. I mean, there are plenty of options to go wrong here. I really think that the only way that it really blows up is if someone gets scratched after lock. Like, I think we're pretty much set up for 2 games where we know most of the info, and I think that we're fully ready to go. I'm just ready to sit back and watch it. We haven't had basketball for so long. I miss it desperately. I did not fill the void with Korean baseball or even regular baseball in the last week. So I'm ready for my favorite. Well, I did fill the void with a Liverpool championship, so I can't act like I didn't watch soccer that time. But basketball is my next favorite sport after soccer. I'm just ready to be entertained.
And the NBA 2K Sims, we can't forget that, of course. Some of the most fun we've all had collectively doing these streams. But
that feels like we did it 6 years ago.
It really does. It feels like that was like our freshman year of high school, and now we're graduating.
Yeah, I don't like that feels like a full. Oh, we'll just do this to fill the time for the next 2 weeks. Boy, Alex, are we wrong.
Alex, how about you? If you had to pick one place this all goes wrong tonight for a lot of people, there is some chalky players, maybe some ones that you don't buy into quite as much, or the apocalyptic scenario that Josh just outlined. How do you feel like it can potentially go wrong tonight, Alex?
I think just like the players that you're expecting to play don't play. Like Joakim Noah gets benched because he's shacking the fool out there, which very realistic possibility. And then like 30% of people are dead. So I think that it's going to be those 3K players that could sink you tonight. Reggie Jackson's another one where if he's just not playing well, he probably won't see the floor again.
It'd be great fun if Reggie gets to 50% and just puts up his 20 fantasy points that he loves to do as a Clipper, but we'll find out a little bit. We got a minute here before this lock, so make sure you got your lineups in. Josh, who's your pick to win it all this year? Now, I know you've kind of mentioned on some of the other shows, but we got a minute here. Let's go on the record and give our picks to win it all.
That would be the Milwaukee Bucks.
Ooh, Milwaukee. No Bledsoe already tomorrow, so we're already preparing for a fun Milwaukee night tomorrow or day tomorrow. So.
Milwaukee has like a full month to worry about their actual roster. They don't have to care about any of these 8 games or the first round series they play against whoever it is. I don't care what the Magic did to them in our Sim series.
That's a good point. Alex, I know you don't care as much about that long picture quite as much because you're focused on the night to night and the various angles in there. But if you had to pick a team to win it all this year, Alex, who would it be?
I'm kind of intrigued by this 7-team tournament that might take place between the best of the rest. So I'm hoping my Pistons can get another chance at glory. But thanks everyone for tuning in. I think we got an MLB live before lock. So this is live before lock. The only one in the industry.
I'm glad you got one joke in there. We kept it kind. Look, lots of shows out there, lots of choices you have in the industry. So we appreciate you guys being a part of our world here at Awesemo. Make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell because we have content going up all the time. As Alex just mentioned, MLB Live Before Lock coming up next with, I believe, Emac and Jake, your old pal, and the baseball savant. 2 great tastes that go great together. Also, possibly the biggest age gap in all of DFS shows. You got that going for you too. But make sure to watch those guys. They are great. Jake's a lot of fun. And Emac, one of my favorites always. So I think I'm doing a show with this weekend. But we appreciate you guys. So hit that like button and we'll see you guys again around here very soon. So good luck and win that $1 million, guys. Please win that $1 million. Bye.